Generation Y. We've experienced Mayor Rob Ford's egotistical demise, the advent of selfies courtesy of Kim K, and the downfall of powerful media mogul Jian Ghomeshi. It's no wonder why my generation is pigeonholed as narcissistic and entitled. Welcome to Gen Y Perspective. I'm Ashley Peters, and joining me we have on-air extraordinaire Jake Nothdurft. Some of his credentials include working for the CBC, Big Brother, Canada, and the Much Music Video Awards. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm excited to be here. Well, we also have our neighbors to the south, all the way from New Jersey, United States, joining us. Please welcome Rutgers University students TJ, Curran, and Margarita Alvarez. TJ is a writer for the Rutgers University radio sports channel, studying journalism and sports management. And Margarita is an Italian and journalism media studies double major. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And you can join the conversation too. Tweet us, Facebook, and Instagram us at #GenYPerspective, or go to our website, genyperspective.com, to watch all our videos in their entirety. Millennials. We're the demographic born after 1980, spanning ages 18 to 34. We're also the largest age group in American history, with 80 million of us sprinkled around the globe. Our shared vice? The sociologists in Crocs and sweater vests say we have narcissistic personality disorder.
And the culprit behind this unflattering label? Psychology professor Jean Twenge christened us with the nasty name in her groundbreaking book, Generation Me. She says that narcissistic personality disorder is nearly 3 times as high for people in their 20s than generations before.
Although it sounds like psychologists are splitting hairs and making us a tad crazy, we do have some navel-gazing tendencies.
Well, because of our digital native status, we've inherited some vain habits. Just think about how often we groom our online profiles and how we obsess over cultivating mass followings. Also, we tend to gawk at reality TV shows featuring the Kardashians or the Housewives that are basically documentaries about narcissists.
And it doesn't help that in our formative years, our parents and teachers showered us with participation trophies for showing up to the Little League game.
All this cold, hard data begs the age-old question, is this narcissism narrative true?
So let's start the discussion with some sharpshooting questions, TJ and Margarita. There's this drone selfie technology that allows a person to take, the quintessential selfie from an aerial bird's eye view. No pesky selfie stick needed. And the term selfie has also made its debut in the Oxford Dictionary this year, which is crazy. So clearly the selfie captures the zeitgeist of our generation. So Margarita, I'll pass it off to you. Do you think the selfie phenomenon increases our narcissism and self-absorption?
I definitely don't think that the selfie phenomenon increases our self-absorption. I think that that's kind of a misconception about our generation. I think that in a way the selfie is kind of like the new resume. You're constantly grooming yourself to make yourself look better and present yourself in a better light, and I think that that's the new thing.
I mean, way back when they painted pictures of people, that's just because they didn't have the ability to take selfies. Maybe Mona Lisa would have a lot of different selfies too if she had an iPhone. So, I mean, people were painting exaggerated pictures of themselves for long periods of time. People have always been narcissistic. I don't think that just happened to start during Generation Y. Yeah. I think for a long time people have always been worried about the way others perceive them and how they look in portraits or pictures, whether they're paintings or whether they're photographs.
I mean, look at Napoleon. He was definitely short, but he was painted super tall.
Exactly. And everyone was always so concerned, when someone was painting them, they'd have all that makeup, all that stuff covering their face to make their skin look perfect and white and so much makeup on. So, I mean, things really haven't changed, just the way we do them has changed.
Or we defined.
Exactly.
All right.
Very, very interesting.
Now we're going to throw to one of our videos. Kendra Reddy is our expert at our roundtable discussion. She's a certified leadership coach, dynamic speaker, and prolific writer, and she has lots to say about Gen Y and our mischaracterization of entitlement. So let's hear what she has to say.
Boomers grew up in a really different time. They were really brought up in a sequential, with a sequential definition of success. If I work really hard, then I'll be successful, and when I'm really successful, I'll be happy. So in order to do that, I need to go to school, I need to get one job, a secure job, work really hard, meet someone, buy a house, get married, have a baby, etc., etc., etc. So everything was really laid out for them. I think the biggest difference between Boomers and Gen Y now is that Gen Y, we live in a completely different age. So instead of doing things sequentially, people do, and when I say people, I mean, yes, Gen Y. I think they're more vocal about it, but I believe that everybody wants a better life for themselves. Who doesn't want to have it all now? I want love and a really fulfilling career and fulfilling relationships and time with my family and time to volunteer and give back to my community. So I think that the package that it comes in looks different than it has for generations previous to that.
So Kendra Reddy made some compelling points. So let's discuss what she said. Her first point was that, we have a nonlinear view of success. And in the workplace, sometimes we don't have the language to ask for what we want. So we kind of come off sounding more entitled because we want work-life balance. We want all these things. So do you think millennials' workplace expectations are a little too lofty and high and out of touch with reality? I'll throw it to you, TJ.
I don't think they're too high, and I don't think that necessarily all Generation Y employees or workers come off that way and don't know how to ask for what they want. I think that a lot of people in Generation Y are much less complacent in their jobs, and I think that they really want to always move up and always have that upward mobility. And I think that it comes off that they might be entitled to thinking that they deserve a higher position than they should have. But I think that there's a lot of Gen Yers who really do deserve to keep moving up the ranks. And I think a lot of them are actually discriminated against because of their age. And I think that they get generalized with some people who are Gen Yers who happen to be lazier. But I think in every generation there's lazy people. And Gen Y shouldn't be characterized as a generation of all lazy people, because that's just not true.
Very interesting. Well, she also talked about value capital in the video, and we don't just come to work for capital and compensation, but we want new experiences and challenges, and again, we just don't know how to ask for this, so we end up sounding and looking entitled. Margarita, have you kind of experienced this in your work experience, your internship, or with a boss perhaps?
I actually have not experienced that. I think that in the sense I do want to move up and I do want to succeed, but it's definitely just put in the work, and that's how I plan to move up, not by asking per se exactly off the bat that I want to be in this position, but working hard to get to that place and kind of building a foundation for where I want to be in the future.
Great discourse, guys. And viewers at home, we want to remind you to tweet us, Facebook like us, and Instagram us at #GenYPerspective. So let's hear what Rutgers sociology professor Deborah Carr has to say about generational differences and the misunderstanding that ensues because of this.
The baby boom generation was raised and came of age during the Vietnam War, the civil rights era, so they thought very collectively. They saw major social problems that they together wanted to change, whereas the younger generation is very individually focused. They don't think necessarily of large macro social change, but really ways to improve on their own capacities or to do things that benefit themselves. Both generations are considered a little bit disillusioned, but for different reasons. The baby boomers grew up very trusting, but then the world came apart in the 60s with the assassinations of JFK and Martin Luther King, followed by the Vietnam War. So they had this rude awakening that many of them grew up to distrust political figures and major social institutions, whereas the younger generations always came of an age post-Nixon, post-Watergate, and they tended to have a distrust and skepticism toward the political system, even the economic system, and I think that's part of the reason why they tend to be more focused on pursuing individual goals and looking out for number one. Everyone's able to carve out a life and an identity and a personal style that's idiosyncratic in a way that makes them feel special, feeding back into the sense of entitlement.
All right, so Deborah Carr made a good point about, comparing our generations. Baby boomers were more about collective protesting, and they looked at the world through sort of a macro point of view, whereas Gen Y were considered more, we look at the world in a micro, individual view. Do you think that's true? I mean, with the Arab Spring and Occupy Wall Street, are we just not socially engaged? And I'll throw that to you, Margarita.
Well, thanks, Ashley. I personally don't think that we are just self-engaged and that we're a singular person protesting about one thing. I think that we come together in a group kind of like during the Vietnam days, maybe not as big and huge, but we do come together at the end of the day to work for our causes and to get our voices heard.
Yeah,
Right.
just look what's going on in Ferguson right now. There's always different protests going on, and people say that we're lazy and we don't want to get up and do things, but protesting is pretty huge.
Yeah, especially online, right? Because we kind of live in sort of a global village with the democratization of the internet. We're all kind of hyper-connected. Those are great points. All right, so the selfish shaming doesn't end there. It also spills over into the workplace. The National Institute of Health claims that 40% of millennials believe they should be promoted every 2 years, regardless of their work performance.
Well, and there's also bad blood when it comes to Gen Y and their bosses. We're known as the generation who emails the CEO to beg off projects we find dull.
We're also likely to have an average of 7 jobs before age 26. And once we park in an office, 70% of us uproot ourselves within the first 2 years of joining.
Now, I know we're not Miss Manners nor model citizens, but why is Gen Y considered so snobbish in the workplace?
A few reasons of note. With the democratization of the internet, we're inundated with a buffet of career options that weren't available 10 years ago.
And with the advent of social media startups, Gen Y has redefined the workplace landscape.
Born text messaging while bottle feeding, we're pegged as impatient and entitled rookies. Gen Y comes into the workforce with guns blazing, looking for instant gratification and jonesing for on-the-spot promotion. We expect to go from hero to zero overnight, while baby boomers have a different workplace strategy.
Boomers grew up during major cultural upheaval like the Vietnam War and the missile crisis, so experts say they hanker for stability, and that includes job security.
Meaning they're loyal pencil pushers who don't mind logging in the extra hours. They also believe in the gospel of staying in one 9-to-5 job until they give their boss the golden handshake and retire.
And against the saintly backdrop of boomers, Gen Y is pinned as self-seeking, deadweight employees, always looking for either an exit strategy or for upward mobility.
So on that note, let's hear what Gen Yers think about our silver spoon syndrome at work. We asked Ryerson students what they thought about the sobering statistic of millennials flying through 7 jobs before the age of 26. Let's hear what they had to say.
I think it's good because we gain experience through the workforce and learn different abilities and skills through those jobs.
I believe it's a good thing in a way because you get experience in a lot of different fields. That way you have options to choose.
I think it's a bad thing because it shows that people are staying with certain jobs for less time.
At least you get experience in different fields so you know what you want to do later on.
Trying different jobs and allows them to sort of get to know themselves a little bit better.
It will give them a better perspective as to what it is that they want to do in the future, but at the same time they're killing potentially 5, 6, 7 years before they choose their final career.
There's a lot more people and a lot less jobs.
So, TJ, do you think this job hopping helps or hurts the Gen Y stereotype that we're lazy and entitled?
Well, I think there's 2 different sides to the job hopping. I think there's some people who may actually be flaky and they jump from job to job because they can't hold one down or they don't have the commitment ability to stick with one. But I think there's some people who might just have 3 jobs at one time because they're paying off the crazy college tuition that now everyone has because going to college is so common. It's almost expected of everyone in Gen Y, whereas in past years it hasn't been that way.
That's a good point.
Absolutely. Margarita, 46% of the workplace is made up of boomers, and they're known as loyal and diehard employees, as mentioned in the previous content. They grew up during major cultural upheaval, like many of the events mentioned, and all of this is owing to the fact that they gravitate towards job security. So against their one job for life rationale, millennials are kind of looking extremely entitled and unreliable. In your opinion, Margarita, whose workplace logic is better, do you think?
I actually think that neither of those are really concrete. I think that a lot of boomers have not just stayed with one job. They've gone out to seek what they actually were passionate about. And I think that our generation kind of gets stereotyped with moving into so many jobs, but the fact is that a lot of jobs don't hire people right out of college, and if they do, it's for temp jobs or freelance, so we don't get to stay and stick with that job, and that's why perhaps we run through so many jobs.
Thank you, Margarita. And don't forget to join the debate and challenge the status quo on Gen Y stereotypes. Tweet, Facebook, and Instagram us at #GenYPerspective, and check out our website, genyperspective.com. Next, we have Rutgers students telling us their ideal job post-graduation.
In my opinion, the perfect job has to be I'm happy doing it, you know. I gotta love doing what I gotta do. I don't want to come into work feeling miserable and doing something that I don't really like.
The perfect job is where you can be home on a Wednesday afternoon and still make a lot of money.
The perfect job to me would be something that doesn't feel like work, something that I'm passionate about, and if I go to work every day, even if I'm not making a lot of money, if I'm happy, then at the end of the day, that's what I would want.
I would like to travel and like get paid and while I'm young, you know?
A perfect job is doing what you love and getting paid for it.
In order to get a good job, you need a good education, and to get that, you have to pay for it. So I think it's what you make of it, and everything that you put into it is what you'll get out of it. If you study hard, you're going to have more qualities and get a better job.
All right, one of the guys in that clip said, you know, his ideal job would to be home on a Wednesday afternoon and make money. And so kind of the overriding theme in these students' responses is that they kind of buck against the notion of just hard work, and they're immune to a hard work ethic. Did you hear that similar thing? Like, you know, that they just, this whole laziness and not wanting to go into a conventional workplace? And I'll ask you, TJ, that. Is that what you heard too?
I interpret that a little bit of a different way than I think you presented it. You kind of said, you know, since that he wants to be home on a Wednesday, maybe that unconventional job makes him sound lazier because he wants to be home making money on a Wednesday. But I think to get to that point, you have to work really hard, and you have to really, you know, do a lot of work before you get to the point where you can be home on a Wednesday making money. So I think that a lot of Generation Yers really want to make their own job positions. They don't want to just conform to the job positions that are presented to them.
Well, and also like TJ was saying, it's kind of misleading to say that if you're home on Wednesday, you're not working hard. You could be at your computer working hard, researching things that would probably put you ahead in the market. So I think it's not, the conception of you being at home is incorrect and you not working hard.
Great. Thank you, Margarita.
Interesting. Well, experts are saying that overprotective parents, grade inflation in high school, and unrealistic universities job promises perpetuate this workplace entitlement. And since we have the worst job search since the Great Depression, are our career expectations just out of touch with what's actually going on? Just really quickly, Margarita.
I don't think that we're out of touch per se with the job market, and I think that it's just very difficult for our generation to get jobs. I think it's very difficult because they see us as a young generation, they see us as a generation that is so attached to media. So I think the way that we look at the job market is completely different.
All right, thank you. So leaving the workforce in droves, most Yers are starting their own workplaces that are more conducive to their work habits. We talked to Hamza Khan, a social media strategist and entrepreneur who drives Ryerson University media strategy with his startup Splash Effect.
My name is Hamza Khan, and I am the co-founder of Splash Effect, a Toronto-based digital marketing agency that services the higher education sector. What really attracted me to the entrepreneurial lifestyle was the idea that the distance between my input and my output would be reduced. It would almost be non-existent. The decisions that I would make now would impact things that would happen right away, as opposed to working in a large organization that is very bureaucratic in nature. We aren't lazy, we aren't entitled, but we are motivated by different things, and we require different stimuli to keep us involved and invested in projects. And the sense of laziness isn't really laziness, it's actually disconnect that happens when an employer or an endeavor or an organization isn't receptive to our needs as far as investing us in the purpose, investing us in the mission. We need context. I'd say it's quite the opposite. We're actually driven, we're actually motivated, independent, and we want to do good work. We mean well. What often happens is our environments aren't conducive to supporting that sense of restless innovation and creativity.
Margarita, do you think Gen Y is addicted to this instant gratification that Hamza talked about in the video?
Well, thanks, Ashley. I don't think, and from my personal experience, that we are in need of instant gratification. I think that we work really hard, and therefore that's why we get told that we're doing a great job. I don't think that we're often seeking it or seeking it out in order to continue doing our job. I think that it's something that comes with what you do if you do it well.
Well, he also raised an interesting point in that video too around kind of our work environments as well. Most sterile offices and confining cubicles, they aren't conductive to our engagement at work, and with the advent of places like Google, Microsoft, Apple, and other Silicon Valley firms, they're creating these playground offices. TJ, this is for you. Do you think this lazy at work stereotype is kept alive by these playground offices?
Well, one example I think that's interesting that pertains to this is Google. People who work at Google, they have inside their building, they basically give the employees projects and tell them, it has to be done by this date. And inside the building, there's a gym, there's like a cafeteria, there's all different types of activities they can, utilize and use. And they put all this stuff in front of them and say, just get it done by the deadline. And it turns out that those people are actually the most productive because they have the most freedom. So I think giving more freedom to our generation has made us more productive and more creative as a whole.
Right.
I completely agree.
Great. Generation Y, we've experienced 9/11, the recession, and Occupy Wall Street. We've also felt the brunt of some hate. Generations before us pegged Gen Y as self-important.
And it's not just hot air. There may be some truth to our bad rap. Psychologists also say Gen Y is so consumed with self that we get a hit of dopamine when someone likes our online status. We tally likes and followers like sales figures.
And because life expectancy is increasing and technology gives Gen Yers a smorgasbord of careers to choose from, workplace turnover and entitlement has never been so pronounced.
This what's in it for me philosophy may be a touch opportunistic, but it hasn't been at the expense of philanthropy.
Channeling our inner humanitarian, our generation forks out 75% of their hard-earned cash to charities and 63% of their precious time to volunteer work.
So although the hallmark of being in your 20s is introspection and looking out for number one, we're also a big-hearted and generous bunch.
And on that note, we want to thank you for watching Gen Y Perspective. Be sure to continue the conversation on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram with the hashtag Gen Y Perspective, and head over to our website, genyperspective.com.
And we want to give a huge thank you to TJ and Margarita for joining us in their exchange of views. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Ashley Peters.
And I'm Jake Nothdurft.
And this has been Gen Y Perspective, just a bunch of 20-somethings poking holes in millennial stereotypes.